Good morning, everybody. Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. So, today's workout. Wow, that was a Freudian slip right there. Today's topic is from the community. I would say, I get a ton of questions and topics and things like that to discuss thrown my way, and a whole bunch of them are about programming. Overwhelmingly, there's just tons of programming questions out there, a lot of interest in the subject, which is really, really cool, especially because I'm a total programming nerd, so it's always nice to join and hear from other programming nerds. And it's obviously such a mission-critical part of what we're doing. And so today's workout, I said it again. Today's topic is going to be about brevity, the beautiful nature of brevity and the beautiful concept of less is more, which is my personal opinion that, at least it can seem based upon social media, which isn't always the truth. So I'm open to the fact that I could be wrong. But there does seem to be a drifting in a not insignificant segment of the CrossFit community away from what I would say are the fundamental teachings that work really well and have stood the test of time and have kept people really fit and have kept them from getting burned out and tweaked and messing up their knees and backs and not just doing silly stuff all the time, to just doing more and increasing volume, then adding on more and then layering on something else. That seems to be my perception. Again, I'm open to the fact that I'm wrong. But when I get to these topics and questions that I get all the time, if I had to say there's a whole bunch of stuff that programmers should focus on, new programmers or experienced programmers, but today's is going to be a critical concept, which is removing anything which is unnecessary. Get the nonsense out of there. And this is summed up, I think, really well. You can apply this to programming if you're creating workouts from a very well-known quote that I've heard different people attributed to the quote. I tried to figure out who it really is from. And here's the general consensus from Pascal, who was a French philosopher who wrote the Lettres Provinciales. I'm probably saying that more with a Spanish accent than a French accent. My apologies. But Pascal wrote famously, "I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time." So once again, the famous quote is, "I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time." And at first, if you haven't heard that quote before, it may sound confusing because it might sound like, well, writing a shorter letter takes less time than writing a longer letter. A longer letter would take time. But that's not the case, because if you just write a long letter or you're long-winded, you can just babble and babble and babble and scratch everything down, and who cares? But to write a short letter, to get the point across, the most essential point, you probably write the long letter initially, and then with a really astute eye, you go back and read every word. You're critical of every word, every sentence, every phrase, every thought, and you start to slowly edit and remove and refine and polish and edit and refine and polish. And that takes a really long time. That's why it takes longer to write a short letter. And then when you finally finish, after whatever great period of time it took, you're probably left with something very powerful and potent and brief and beautiful and elegant. Well, that same concept I wholeheartedly take to a programming approach as well. And again, my personal opinion is I think there's a fair amount of people in the community that have gotten away from that. And so I would encourage you to get back to that, because it's a tougher path to program like that. But I think I definitely think it's more beautiful, but I actually think it's more effective. And I think it keeps people from running into what I hear all the time, which is burning out, tweaking themselves, getting a little injury, and then blaming CrossFit. When truth be told, probably what they're doing every day is just far too much. They've fallen into the volume trap, and now they're paying the price for it, and they're blaming CrossFit. And it shouldn't be that way, because if we get back to actually the roots of what we're doing, it's very much like that Pascal quote right there. So brevity, editing, and reduction, that is the more difficult path in writing, and it's the more difficult path in programming as well. But don't get frustrated, hang in there, and I'm here to tell you that the payoff is worth it. Please don't, as a programmer, fall into the whole, I'm going to throw part A and part B and part C at my athletes, and we're going to get good at weightlifting during our weightlifting piece that we do every day, and we're going to get good at conditioning during our conditioning piece that we do every day, and then we're going to get good at CrossFit and something else with the Metcon that we do each day. And then, holy cow, again, how you're fitting that into a class, how you're doing all of those things with virtuosity and intensity in any sustainable period of time that's not a day or a week. I mean, if you're going to do that for months or years, I don't think you're going to be met with great success for that. And the part A, B, and C, and the weightlifting piece, followed by the conditioning piece, followed by the Metcon piece, or whatever it happens to be, I personally believe that is not only has no regard for time, but it has no regard for the tolerance of the athlete. It has no regard for the potential of overtraining. It has no regard for the importance and benefit of intensity, because as volume increases, intensity goes down. That's just exercise science 101. And it doesn't have any understanding of the transference of movements and how some things give you a lot more bang for your buck, and so you don't need to just keep adding on something else and something else and something else. I would say another way to think about it is, what's tougher to do? If you are incredibly rich, which would be wonderful, I'm sure, in many aspects, and you have a 10-car garage, and you're going to outfit your home gym, you're like, man, I don't have to think about laying out my space. I have a 10-car garage, so I'm going to take the GHD and the rower and the bike and the weight tree and all this stuff, and it can go wherever, who cares? If you have a 1-car garage, and that's all you have, and you walk into a 1-car garage, and somebody has spent a tremendous amount of time meticulously thinking about optimizing the space and the functionality, and they're getting everything done in this 1-car garage, and it is maximized, you're like, wow, it's actually really impressive how you've laid out this space. Man, talk about optimizing and bang for your buck. That's incredible. Well, that takes a lot more effort than just, you have all the space in the world, who cares where things goes. That's getting back to the Pscal quote and getting back to applying this to programming as well. So, we did a couple varied, not random episodes. If you really want to geek out on programming, it's How to Program Workouts Part 1 and Part 2. I think those were the names of it. So they're each like an hour long, so you can just dive into those if you want. So those should be kind of things you should check out. But I will say, getting back to this Pscal quote of didn't have the time to write a long letter. I didn't have the time to write a short letter. When I lay out a 4-week block of programming, which is what I do, I start big picture, and this is all covered in those very not random episodes as well. And that big picture can be global necessities of all human beings, such as going below parallel, pulling from the ground, going overhead, body weight pulling, pushing in various directions, etc., etc. Those will get, I'll lay out a rough sketch, a rough roadmap of where we need to go for those based upon where we've been. Then I'll play that same game with the movement selection to meet those needs, the time domains, the rep ranges, the loadings, etc., etc. All rough, all not falling in love with it. Can't fall in love with your work at this point in time. It's way too early in the game. After all of that is laid out, then I'll get into kind of smaller, more granular details of some of the larger picture items that we just went through. And that could be, a larger picture item was going overhead, and maybe we went overhead on a particular day with a particular loading, whatever it happens to be. But then you can geek out on something as simple as going overhead, because there's going overhead with classic pressing, like a shoulder press, and that doesn't have any hip drive. Or are we going overhead with hip drive, like a push press, be it, and now we're going to do dumbbells or barbells or something like that. Are you going to go overhead with something you could call impact loading, like a push jerk or split jerk, where you're going to elevate the barbell using that hip drive, get yourself back under it, receive it in a locked out position, stand it back up? Are you going to be going overhead in a challenging yet more of a stabilization role that doesn't involve pressing, such as like an overhead squat, for example? Then you've got all the snatch variations. Or are you going to go overhead in a gymnastics way, inverted, with something like a handstand walk? Or are you going to do handstand push-ups, be it kipping or strict or whatnot? So yes, you're going to go overhead, but then you can spend a whole lot of time on how you're going overhead. And that same game is played on the below parallel, the pulling from the ground, and all of that stuff. And that's done via looking back as to where we've been, checklists I have to make sure that those different things are covered in an appropriate fashion. Some have more weight than others because some have more transference than others. But basically, all that gets polished and polished and polished, right? Those 4 weeks happen. And it takes a long time to do that, by the way, a tremendously long period of time. But anyway, once there's something occupying each day, and once I'm generally happy with the overview, generally happy with covering the global needs, such as the pulling, the going below parallel, the going overhead, blah, 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 generally happy with the time domains, the variance there, the loadings, all that stuff, when I'm generally happy, then getting back to the point of this thing, the Pascal's quote of, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. Now is when the real work begins, and now a whole another big block of time is going to get spent on editing, on breaking out the scalpel and removing anything which is not essential. If it's not essential, why do it? That's fluff. We're not looking for fluff. We are looking to do the most impactful and beneficial workout each day that builds upon what happened the day before and leads to what's happening the next day, and in that beautiful symphony keeps the athlete reaching the appropriate level without overreaching, stumbling, overtraining, and all of that good stuff. And this is when the real work begins, in removing and editing and removing and editing. And it takes a fair amount of time. But I will say, as frustrating as that may be when you're new to programming, it's worth it, so hang in there. And in my personal opinion, when you finally get down to the essence of the workout, what it's supposed to be, nothing else can be removed, and there's no need to add anything else because what's there works profoundly well. That's when you have something which is not just a training day, not just a workout. This is when my geeks coming in. But you have something really beautiful. Like that's when, in my mind, when a workout becomes beautiful, and plenty of them do, and becomes elegant and in like a mathematical sense. That, in my humble opinion, should be the goal of beautiful, effective CrossFit. And when you get to that point with your workouts, which is so fantastic and rewarding, that's when programming also becomes confusing, which is really cool. And what I mean by confusing is the individuals doing the programming, doing the workouts each day, reap the benefits, see the rewards, but they're confused as to why it's working. Like, for example, we don't squat and deadlift all the time. Why in the world does my squat and deadlift keep going up? And I'm not talking about a beginner lifter where just because you're a beginner, every time you touch the barbell, you get a new PR. That's not what I'm talking about. People who have been in the game 5, 7, 9, 11 years of lifting, still getting squat and deadlift PRs, and they look back and they're like, we're not squatting and deadlifting that much. How is it possible? That's the confusion that just makes me smile. And it should make you smile as well as a programmer, because then you're delivering incredibly impactful workouts in the minimum dose possible. And that's what you're going for. Same thing with like your 5K. People are like, how did I PR my 5K? We're not doing some 5K program. Been running for years. What's happening here? That's the beautiful sort of confusion that I'm talking about right there. So again, just my personal opinion, but I get these questions all the time, and people ask me questions. I'm assuming they want to hear what I truly and honestly think on the topic, so I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'm not trying to offend, but I'm not trying to lie to anybody either. So my personal humble opinion is that there's some folks out there that have lost sight of what CrossFit is all about, have lost sight with regards to both the workouts and how much working out is actually needed to get profoundly fit, how much beyond that is unnecessary because you're just going to put your knees, back, and shoulders at risk, or you're going to leave the athlete so overtrained that they're just tired all the time, and then they can't hit workouts with intensity, and then they're not getting results. And they're also not being able to hit the workouts with intensity because on top of being tired all the time, every day is a slog session in the gym of part A, B, and C. I mean, that's, in my mind, that's a very easy bouncing ball to follow, and that trail doesn't lead anywhere good. So that's it. Hey, if you have a love for Olympic lifting, I don't care. Have a blast. Go Olympic lift to your heart's content. You want to be a power lifter. You want to bias your training in that way. You want to do that. I'm not going to stop you. Do whatever you want to do. Have an absolute blast. But if we're talking want versus need, those are two different things. What the athlete actually needs to drive forward in a happy and healthy fashion, I think is far less than what I'm seeing on a regular basis, and that's what's leading to a lot of athlete burnout and a lot of little upset knees, back, and shoulders, and a lot of people saying that CrossFit doesn't work. I don't think that's a fair statement, because there's a whole bunch of different variations of CrossFit out there, and that would just be my 2 cents on that. So that's it. Have a wonderful day. Remember, less is more. Remember that editing in brevity is far more challenging than just part A, B, C, and D. And that beautiful, beautiful Pscal quote I absolutely love. I'll say it one more time. I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk soon.